Good evening. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources that will hope to help improve your life. I'm Stu Reid. This is my co-host, Dave Burstein. Hey, Dave.
Well,
How
it's
you doing?
it gets hot a lot. But did you see what's coming from the Midwest in the last 2 weeks?
No, what's that? Other than
We
all that
got
cool
real
frosty weather.
cold, a lot of snow, and the newspaper said that 90 people died, cars slipping on the ice and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we know global warming is strong. And in fact, we have data that last year was the warmest on record and probably the warmest in like 14,000 years or so.
And how long, Dave? 14,000?
Probably something like 14,000 years or so.
How would they compute that, Dave? I mean, we've only been keeping records for the last 100 years or so, no?
Yeah, but the Earth keeps records really well.
Ah, okay.
You drill down an ice core in Antarctica,
Uh-huh.
which they've done a lot of, and you actually can see what the climate was by the ice that you from your borehole. It
Interesting.
works, it's
Wow.
now standard, and they have probably the last 100,000 years pretty well. And they have other things with some of the old trees to take them back to.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, we know how hot it was, and it wasn't this hot, possibly possibly since the last ice age, 12,000 years ago.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a little scary. So now, how does the climate change? Does it factor into the cold weather spell as well? I mean, is that I'm sure
That's
it
what
must be
it's looked
related to
like. It's not been proven, but the weather in general, hurricanes, tsunamis, extreme cold to go with the extreme heat the last few years has been setting records.
it. Hmm.
Uh, and it may very well be that what's happening is that, yes, it's creating global warming, but along the way, they're making a much more difficult climate.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's unproven at this point, but that's the speculation.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I know for me, I've experienced this winter is just starting, so I can't really make any real conclusions about it. But to me, it has not been extraordinarily cold day. I certainly remember winters much colder than this. Granted, we're only in mid-January, so I can't really make any conclusions, but it has not been extraordinary to me so far. Well, what's your take?
Well, it's been extraordinary to both of us so far this year and last winter. How much snow did we have last winter?
I don't think we had but a few inches left. The last winter and the winter before, just a couple of inches, right?
I don't think it was even a couple of inches last year.
Now that's extraordinary. That's extraordinary.
Uh, and this one you don't know because it's before you came to New York. But I remember when I was in fourth grade, you almost didn't have to go to school because there were two 20-inch snowfalls and another one that was really big.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
we
they
had
had
a couple snowfalls like that in Cleveland, Dave, where I grew up, and I can remember stories my dad walking to work, which was like miles and miles because no buses, nothing was running, and stories about going out, getting milk and bread for the kids and the family, and a couple feet of snow. This is back in the early 50s.
what looks like good news is that the problem can easily be solved relatively inexpensively.
Really?
Why do I say that? Solar energy is exploding. The ads of solar cells in the last 2 or 3 years has
Hmm.
been more than twice what they expected. And if it keeps going up like that, that will make an enormous difference.
Okay, you're talking about the ads for solar power. What about the actual usage of solar power? What about the efficiency of the solar panels? I've heard that the efficiency is not that high. They're waiting for and looking for a breakthrough. It has to have been one.
They're up at about 17% in the field and
Hmm.
21% in the lab, and they're not likely to get much further. They may make them a little bit cheaper by changing the materials,
Hmm.
just as they're helping to make the batteries for the electric cars a lot cheaper. Uh, did I tell you about the 500-kilometer car?
Yeah, we talked about that briefly. I think it was last week. I forget where it came from. It was probably China. Uh, but yeah, 500 miles on a charge. That's pretty astounding when I think the average is around 150 to 200 miles.
Well, it was 500 kilometers,
Okay, so
which is
that's more
about
like 300.
300 miles, but
Okay.
it still is, and there's loads of that. Uh, I'm constantly reporting because I've been doing telecom and now I'm doing AI in almost unbelievable amount of progress coming from China. Let me throw in a story quickly. There is a new medicine that had excellent results against one kind of breast cancer in stage 1 and stage 2 trials.
Hmm.
It's gone into stage 3 with the FDA giving it a breakthrough designation is what it's called. This is good news in general. This is one of the first American medicines that was invented and developed in China.
Wait. How can it be American developed in China? What's that mean, Dave?
Being, I'm sorry, I didn't wasn't clear. Being used and licensed in America,
Okay.
but going to
Developed
China.
in China. Okay.
Yeah. And on AI, a couple of big breakthroughs in the last three months. Uh, it's just like that. And
Now,
they're
did
called.
AI play a role in this cancer medicine in China?
I'm sorry.
Did AI play a role in developing this cancer treatment in China?
Almost definitely not.
Okay.
AI. Well, let me tell you what AI is playing a role in. At this point, there's one AI designed drug that's in a stage 2 test. There are a couple going into stage 1 that have probably started. There are about 100 that they're working on in the lab and in animal testing
Hmm.
because what they can do, how does AI work? Most of it is just taking a heck of a lot of data and tell the computer, find some patterns here. So if it finds a pattern that work of cancer drugs, it can look and find 100 similar drugs to check out. That is now standard procedure at many, probably most of the big drug companies. It also has been enormously important in what's going on in chemistry and physics.
Hmm.
AlphaFold did something almost unreal. There are 200,000 proteins that we've identified over the last 300 years. We only had the structure of a few hundred because it takes an experimenter 6 to 12 months to do it the way we know how to do it. They threw AlphaFold at it, took the drugs that we knew, the proteins we knew the structure of, said, find the pattern, figure out how proteins fold. And 80% of the known proteins, they now have a three-dimensional structure, and that's huge.
Hmm.
Now, that same software, which comes out of Google owned DeepMind in London, has just been thrown on finding psychedelic possibilities.
You say
And
psychedelic?
psychedelic.
Okay.
DeepMind found several hundred possible new psychedelic drugs by looking at what they had, or the ones that were known, and finding the patterns.
Hmm.
This is great news. Uh, but while we're on psychedelics, let me give you another story. We talked before the show, and you didn't remember ibogaine. about 30 years ago. And there was a huge story in the Village Voice, and we had it on BAI, of a fellow whose name I forget, I think Howard something, who had been a heroin addict,
Mm.
went to Africa, came back, and said, this extract from this plant, which was called ibogaine, had cured his heroin addiction. Nobody in medicine really believed it, but he had a lot of people who were using it. That's why we brought it to the air on BAI.
Mm. And it was not an illegal substance, was it, Dave? Was it?
It was a whole illegal substance. They had to smuggle it in.
Mhm.
There weren't enough people involved for the FDA to bother to throw criminal charges at them, but they could have. And
They
the
didn't bother
report,
to test it either, apparently, sounds like.
I'm sorry,
Did they bother to even test it? I mean, or they just dismissed the guy as a crackpot?
I don't know the details on that, but I think he was just dismissed as a crackpot.
Okay. Hmm.
Well, 30 years later, we have testing coming out of Stanford and some other universities of ibogaine, which seems to work quite well on post-traumatic stress disorder.
Hmm.
Now, that's a small study, but it, it was almost criminal to outlaw psychedelics.
Hmm.
Put them under strong control, perfectly sensible. I, I, I heard lots of stories of people going literally out of their mind after a psychedelic trip, and lots of how you avoid going out of your mind, which was Tim Leary at Harvard talking about set and setting, that you have to go in it with a mind that's prepared for it,
Hmm.
and you have to be in a setting that is calm and peaceful, preferably with someone who can guide you. Those things, if they put that into the law, as they are now trying to do with psilocybin, which is now legal in Oregon, perfectly sensible. But there are now excellent results that psilocybin works well on depression.
Hmm.
It may be the first substantial new antidepressant discovered in 15 years.
Hmm.
And as somebody who's struggled with depression all my life,
Hmm.
uh, if this is really good and it was kept off by some very scared people in Washington who didn't want to take a chance and didn't even want to let the research go on, that's almost criminal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Special K, ketamine, is also working really well and being put to use. It's legal because it's used as an anesthetic, and some doctors are taking the ketamine, and for like $500, will give you a ketamine test for a few hours. And they say they're getting good results. And the lab stuff coming out of Johns Hopkins and others says seems to be working pretty well.
Hmm.
And this is great. Uh, and I spoke to my internist, who's very sharp,
Hmm.
and asked her, are these things I should try? Is it reasonable? And she's told me it's looking good. So it's early on any of that. It doesn't mean you go out on the street and buy Special K and think to cure your depression. But they actually have a drug called esketamine, which is a slightly modified form that I believe is legal in England,
Hmm.
and lots more going into trials.
Hmm.
So, am I telling you to go get high or stoned, have a trip? No, I'm telling you that you might come to that decision yourself. And I strongly suggest if you do, you run it by some serious medical people or others you trust.
Yeah,
These are not
we
innocent
know,
drugs.
we know, Dave, if you look at some of the ancient cultures, tribal cultures, both in the Americas and in Africa, that psychedelics were used in religious rituals. And just to your statement about Leary, the guided experience. Um, these drugs, peyote and others often smoked, were part of a guided experience in the community, in a communal experience that guided folks through an experience. And all kind of phenomenal results and experiences, and been written about the adventures of who wrote the Don Juan story? Carlos Castaneda did a number of books about this stuff from the Western point of view, and talked about the guided and healing experiences from psychedelics. But Dave, I want to just segue just for a moment, as we talk about these drugs and prohibited drugs, and now drugs that are being that were previously prohibited and now being experimented with and to some success. I read a recent story in Wired magazine about placebos, and placebos are it's an inert substance that's sometimes given to patients instead of real drugs, usually unbeknownst to them, often in medical trials where they will be trying a drug, and they give one group of patients the drug, and they give another group in the trial a placebo. Basically, is often just sugar pills, where it should have no results at all, as a way to compare the results. Well, this story talked about something that they're calling open label placebos, where they're actually prescribing placebos, where the patients know it's a placebo, and they're getting results. They're getting clinical results from the placebo, which is pretty astounding. And there's some stories that they cite. A story that went back, a study from the Archives of General Psychiatry that went back to 1965, where they talked about they had positive results from placebos. And you had certain patients that said that they believed that there was something in the placebo that was helping them. And I'm reminded, not too long ago, I read a book by a guy named Dr. Joe Dispenza. The name of the book was "You Are the Placebo: Making Your Mind Matter." And he talked about, Dave, about how powerful the mind is. And if the mind believes that what they are taking is a healing drug, the mind can, in fact, heal the body. And he has, this guy's an MD. He has, in his book, he has numerous documented cases that reverse cancer, heart disease, depression, crippling arthritis, and even the tremors of the Parkinson disease by people believing in the placebo. And Dispenza went on to talk about how powerful the mind is, and how the mind actually controls the body. And if the mind believes that they are taking a healing drug, that the mind can in fact heal the body. And he does a whole thing of brain scans where he shows brain activity happening as a result of this. Fascinating stuff. I really recommend this book to our audience. It's called "You Are the Placebo," and basically his whole premise is that we have within our own bodies and minds the capability to cure ourselves without outside drugs. But we have to train our minds to do that. And he talks about a lot of ways to do that. And again, he has clinical examples of how this has worked. Healing all kinds of things. Again, cancer, arthritis, heart disease, basically using the mind. So, it's making a comeback. The story in Wired magazine, again, talked about how now they are marketing what they call OLP, open label placebos, Dave, where they're giving placebos to patients, and patients are getting cured. Pretty amazing.
But not that often.
Okay, well, if it
But
happens at all, that's pretty amazing.
it's pretty amazing. Nobody would believe it, but there's serious studies that have been happening and finding that lately.
Mm-hmm.
And if you believe that you're being taken care of, you often do better. Not often, sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And
Uh, I
again,
first heard this.
Dispenza talks about ways and techniques to train your body and mind to enhance that mind body healing behavior. So, I mean, yes, you say it doesn't happen that often, but look, reading Dispenza and some of his work, there are ways to increase the likelihood and the efficacy of placebos or of mind healing. So, I mean, it's just a phenomenon that occurs, and it's one that I think Western medicine is abhors because you can't patent that kind of stuff. You can't license it. You can't make money off of it. But it's fascinating, nevertheless, that the mind can heal the body, does heal the body, and we can learn how to make that more efficient, that process more efficient. Fascinating stuff to me.
I had this conversation in 1987 with the New York City Commissioner of Health.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a lot of reporting on AIDS at that point, and all the people that I was hearing from with AIDS were saying, if you believe you're going to heal, you do much better.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him about it, and he said, nothing's been proven, but I think it's probably true.
Mm-hmm.
That was a distinguished physician who was New York City's health commissioner. On
Mm-hmm.
the other hand, at the same time, there was a lot of mind body medicine, and they did a lot of studies at places like Memorial looking at really does that help cure cancer? And the results were not interesting. They didn't get much there. So there's definitely something going on because people who are being taken care of, and that's going to happen if the doctor even gives you a placebo, are getting better in limited numbers. But
Mm-hmm.
that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Is it time for a break?
Just about. We got a couple minutes. What are we going to talk about when we come back? I know there's a lot going on with the war and AI and stuff going on with in the satellite cell phone industry that we want to talk about. Any other thing you want to tease us with before we go to break?
Well, most people in offices who need to do some typing use Microsoft Word. It's almost everywhere, even though they're free equivalents. And Microsoft took the ChatGPT and Dolly, which does the illustrations, and built it right into Word and PowerPoint.
Hmm.
In other words, if you're sitting there writing something about mind body healing and cancer,
Mm-hmm.
you can just hit a key, type in mind body healing and cancer, and get results from Bing, which uses ChatGPT in the background
That's
right
take
away.
that's taking spell check and word completion to a whole nother level, Dave. Wow, that's stunning. Yeah.
Now, I do that in effect, but I do it by having a window of Bing or ChatGPT
Mm-hmm.
open in another window and just copy and paste what I want to find out. But if it's there, going to tens of millions of people in offices, that is going to get it out. And they want $240 a year per person.
Mm-hmm.
They're mostly going to sell it in large numbers to corporations. I
Yeah.
don't know if you even can buy it retail. Uh, but Bing, of all things, after 25 years, I have switched from Google to Bing for my search engine.
Mm-hmm.
And I was amazed because I was using it because it was a way to get to AI chat GPT without paying $20 a month. Well, they've
Mm-hmm.
changed that now. Uh, and I was amazed. Bing at this point is much better at getting information
Really
in Google.
interesting.
I wouldn't have believed it. I've been looking at this for 25 years.
Interesting.
Yeah, but
Let's talk
they
about
do.
this one. I've been using DuckDuckGo as a result of our conversation with our former co-host Lena Marvin. Hi, Lena. We haven't heard from her in a while, but she got me on DuckDuckGo some years ago because of the privacy of DuckDuckGo. It doesn't track you like Google does. But this is the first I've heard, Dave, of actually improved results from a different search engine. Interesting.
What you get, what it does is, along with the list of articles, which is presented well and looks to be for many things as good as Google. And I know Google really well. I must use it 50 times a day sometimes.
Mhm.
And alongside it, it goes to ChatGPT, says, this is what he's asking about. Let's give him 2 or 3 paragraphs summarizing what ChatGPT could find and present.
Mhm.
And that is something that the AI is doing quite well now, with occasional hallucinations, otherwise known as errors. Uh,
Mhm.
but when I right click on a word because I want to find out uh, more about it, I'm now set that I don't go to Google. I go to Bing, Microsoft, and I get a much cleaner presentation, often with just the information I'm looking for.
Wow.
Google has been trying to do that. Google has their own large language model, one of the best in the world, for the last 6 or 8 months, because they were seeing how valuable it was to people. And they've done a terrible job with it.
Wow.
They have been putting up there some information, but so often it was not the information I was looking for. They didn't have that together.
Okay, well, let's talk about that some more, Dave. We got to take a break. This is Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem, with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after a brief musical break.
I used to visit all the very gay places, those come what may places, where one relaxes on the axis of the wheel of life to get the feel of life from jazz and cocktails. The girls I knew had sad and sullen gray faces with distant gay traces that used to be there. You could see where they'd been washed away by too many through the day 12 o'clock tales. Then you came along with your siren song to tempt me to madness. I thought for a while that your poignant smile was was tinged with the sadness of a great love for me. Ah, yes, I was wrong. Again, I was wrong. Life is lonely again, and only last year everything seemed so sure. Now life is awful again. A trough full of hearts could only be a bore. A week in Paris would ease the bite of it. All I care is to smile in spite of it. I'll forget you, I will, while yet you are still burning inside my brain. Romance is mush, stifling those who stray. I'll live a lush life in some small dive, and there I'll be while I rot with the rest of those whose lives are lonely too.
Okay, we're back. Community Technology with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid. Dave, before the break, you were talking about some of the stuff in AI being built into Word and some of the Microsoft Office programs and how that's going to impact everyday life. What else is up with AI lately?
Well, we knew it was going to happen. The internet was made for porn was a song from Avenue Q that everybody was singing
Hmm.
15 years ago. And we know what's out there, and it's changed the lives of some people. Well, right now, AI can do an excellent job copying in a voice and giving you whatever you want to say in the voice of Donald Trump or Obama or Albert Einstein
Hmm.
or the fantasy girlfriends.
Whoa.
And in fact, one of them, whose name was Lila Love or something like that, the company claimed was making $30,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
It was they had made AI pictures for all very chesty,
Mm-hmm.
and they were able to get some motion in them, and it will talk to you on your computer, on your mobile with Messenger, and even with voice. The pictures weren't great, but they were enough that somebody who wanted to fantasize about them
Mm-hmm.
apparently is quite happy doing so.
So now, Dave, you could pick out a voice, a particular voice. How does this work? I mean, Is it a random voice, or you can say you want it to sound like this person or that person? What's the deal?
It is now routine for 11, which one company that just raised $80 million, but you can do it in lots of things, to take a voice and clone it.
Hmm.
They can now take 2 minutes of a voice, your voice, and have it sound like you're saying whatever the computer tells you to say.
Wow, no, that's good. I just read a story, Dave, that there's a series of robocalls in New Hampshire where they're having a presidential primary using Joe Biden's voice, encouraging people not to vote. And apparently AI is behind that whole initiative.
Absolutely. And there's going to be lots more of it, especially because there is no foolproof way to tell whether something was created by AI. On voices, Joanna Stern in the Wall Street Journal had her voice cloned,
Hmm.
called her mother, and her mother didn't realize.
Hmm.
And that was a while back, and it's getting better.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'm not going to give the address on the air, but you can Google things and find yourself. But this service has 14 girlfriends, a couple of ethnicities, different interests, different voices, and you can change the voice,
Hmm.
what you want. And I didn't feel like giving the money to test it out because it's not my thing, but that is absolutely doable today. So deep
Wow.
fakes are showing up in elections around the world.
Hmm.
Argentina they got 1 million views of a deep fake of one of the candidates
And where was this?
saying Argentina.
Okay. Hmm.
Uh, and right now, any 13-year-old boy with a decent gaming PC can create this. And I'm sure a whole lot of them will.
Hmm.
Now, one of the reasons I say gaming PC is that one of the things they're doing is they've made reduced models of the standard AI large language models, 1/10 the size when you're looking at one called Llama from Meta, that are able to be put on a good computer, like a gaming machine, which has
Hmm.
a fast graphics processor. And you can compile that 7B llama, or take that 7B and add to it other things. For example, I could take the 300,000 words I've written over the last 20 years, put it all in front of Llama or ChatGPT or whatever, and find at that point, the computer could probably write in my style, and it certainly can find everything I ever said about Verizon, even if it's not in the title of the song. That's all doable. And you can bring it down to a cell phone.
Hmm.
People, hackers are doing that now with some of the better cell phones. Samsung had a big announcement saying they were going to have AI in their new cell phone. And it looks like they don't have a full scale model, but the AI can do lots of tricks on your video or your image. Apple is doing a lot of this stuff, not talking very much about it. But Apple has its own model, and I am certain that when the next Apple comes out in September, there is going to be a heck of an AI on Apple doing the kinds of things we just talked about,
Hmm.
cloning people's voices, faking videos, and so on, and hopefully doing some more useful stuff.
I hope so. I mean, this kind of frightening as well. I mean, it sounds like, in the not too distant future, you may be able to make a phone call on your cell phone and have anybody's voice talk in the voice of, Donald
It's not
Trump
in
or
the
Barack
distant
Obama.
future. People are doing it now. You talked about they had a campaign speech sounding like Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm. I'm talking
Absolutely.
about in real time. I'm on my phone. I'm making a call, and what the person hears on the other end is Donald Trump speaking, although it's me.
Better than that. And it's working in the Samsung, I believe. You can make a call, talk to somebody in English, and they can get, after a very short lag, what you said in Chinese or French.
Wow.
Instant translation. I know the translations, for example, on the Chinese press I'm reading all the time from Google work
Mm-hmm.
really well. Sometimes when I'm going from something like German to English, I don't know whether I'm reading the original article
Mm.
or a translation.
Now, is the interpretation, is it fluid or is it choppy? I mean, do you know that you're listening to
I
it?
haven't heard it yet, but I've heard things like that that
Mm-hmm.
sounded really good. And if Samson did it right, you can do that right now. And I am sure that that will be one of the features. There will be built into the iPhone in September 12 or 20 languages
Mm.
that it can translate to. Because you don't need the huge ChatGPT $100 million model to do that kind of thing. You can do that kind of thing on a Llama 7B that you could run on a good gaming PC. And
Mm-hmm.
Apple has been working to bring it down to even smaller, not the only ones, so that I know it's coming to the iPhone.
Wow.
Absolutely not enough.
That's some stunning stuff, Dave. I mean, on the one hand, that's incredible that I can call somebody in Africa and talk to Swahili to someone who doesn't know English, and I don't know Swahili, and we can have a conversation back and forth. That's mind blowing.
It works.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I've watched demos of it. Whether it works on the new Samsung phone and the soon to come Google phone, or whether it does it well, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure in the Apple, because the Apple has hired hundreds of AI engineers,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been working very hard, and Apple is very confident it's the logical thing for them to do, and I'm sure they will.
Mm-hmm.
So AI can be wonderful, and AI may destroy us all.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to be talking about some nightmare scenarios as this current election season winds up, Dave, about deep fakes and all kind of disinformation, misinformation that's going to be getting out there, to try and sway voters one way or another over the internet, over major media, over. I mean, it sounds like the technology, Dave, is evolving to the point where you're going to have a hard time trusting anything that you see or hear in and on or over any electronic media. I mean, that's kind of where it seems to be evolving. Would
Yep,
you agree?
which is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be even worse. They just did a poll of 4,000 executives. I think PricewaterhouseCoopers did it. And one out of four of them thought there was a serious danger that AI would destroy the human race
Mm-hmm.
and take over from us. Most people in AI agree that that's possible. Not all. Jan LeCun says no, but many of the best, and just disagree on whether it's highly unlikely or extremely unlikely.
Well, humans are moving pretty close to destroying the human race without AI. I mean, there's a lot going on prior to AI and currently that could wipe us all out. I mean, just look around the planet, all the warfare that's going on, and the advance in the weaponry and the nuclear weaponry, et cetera, et cetera. So, you layer on this AI technology. It's a pretty frightening scenario as to where we're going to go.
Well,
Definitely
when we
be
talk
a tipping
about
point.
the dangers that's happening and the horrible things that are happening to so many people, so many places, we also should sometimes talk about the good things.
Mm-hmm.
They now have a malaria vaccine. An
Mm-hmm.
international effort after 40 years finally got one that works.
Mm.
In Cameroon, they're giving it out to all the babies in the clinic.
Nice.
And they think they will virtually eliminate malaria among people under 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
500,000 children die every year of malaria,
Mm.
which is totally curable.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend who had got it 3 times, but he was from a middle-class family. His father was a government official. They took him to a good doctor, and it was curable, which is one of the horrible things that's going on. 500,000 people die, almost all babies die, children, almost all of them unnecessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't using AI as far as I know. They finally made a vaccine that is working pretty well. Another vaccine, also not using AI, that is working. Oh, no, I told you about. I got this confused in my head, but they are doing cancer vaccines.
Cancer vaccines.
As a vaccine.
Huh, I hadn't heard
Well,
that.
how does the vaccine work? You get a polio vaccine or a smallpox.
Mm-hmm.
It has your body's immune system recognize it, turn on, and destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
So like something like the polio vaccine was a weakened version of the actual polio vaccine that didn't make you sick, but was enough to get the body's immune system able to destroy polio if it came to you. And in a few years, polio in this country went from a horrible disease and affecting millions. I've had some friends to almost gone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what vaccines can do.
So
Now,
now there's a cancer vaccine in development, Dave? Is that what you're
the
saying?
cancer vaccines are not in development. It's in clinical testing and getting good results in melanoma, skin
Wow.
cancer.
Mm-hmm.
It works on the same principle. You present to somebody's immune system a molecule you've put together that looks enough like your melanoma or cancer, and it has that causes your immune system to rev up its attack on the melanoma.
Mm-hmm.
And there are several cancer vaccines out there, and at least one seemed to be having really good results that I saw from serious medical people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's happening. Neither of those, as far as I know, are using AI.
Mm-hmm.
But how much time do we have?
We got about 4 minutes, Dave.
Well, let me go very quickly on this because we're talking about AI, and there's another piece of AI that's in the news. The head of Palantir, a Silicon Valley outfit that works with the U.S. Defense Department, went to Israel, and put out an official agreement with the government of Israel to work with them on AI weapons. AI weapons are being used heavily by the Ukrainians, or not AI weapons, but AI with American and European help. They've set it up that they have the AI defining what's happening everywhere on the battlefield. The Ukrainians now can say, "Oh yeah, we better aim our shells over there because we can see somebody's there," and you can get that. They can feed you instantaneously satellite photo, seeing there's a concentration of Russians. The Russians presumably have something similar, and the drones that they're making today do require a human being to turn them on. But a drone maker who was interviewed recently said, it's a choice. We can change a few little things, and that drone can find its target itself and hit it. And the US is going really hard. Among other things, an assistant secretary of defense said, we hope to have 6,000 or so little autonomous vehicles that we'll put on the battlefield in 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
So it's going to do a better job killing people.
Yeah.
AI does a better job at a lot of stuff.
Mm.
It can't do decent TV video yet. I was just seeing some of the ones, what's considered one of the best companies. They were 4 seconds and 8 seconds and only had a limited amount of motion.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about creating video from nothing, essentially. Creating.
The words, what do you say? You turn around and say,
Mhm.
I want a shot of a waterfall with a beautiful nymph underneath it and a mountain in the background and clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And she's bending over, presumably with enough clothes on that is safe for work. And it will do exactly that, give you 4 seconds of what you wrote.
Mm.
That works,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't work very well, and it doesn't work for anything except these very short ones. Did I explain in there why it's a problem? Let me give it again quickly. I think
Okay. Go ahead.
it's quick. Movies run at 24 frames a second. 24, take that to a minute. 60 times 24 is 1440 frames.
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes is that much more. HD is that much more. So when you're just making a still image, like the girl that will chat with you, that's now easy. It's hard to get it just right that you would fool people, but I've seen some that were that good that they could fool people.
Mm-hmm.
The chat girl, you can tell. But to do video on that, you have to come up with 1,400 or more to get 1 minute. And that's a little bit beyond what's practical now.
Yeah. Computational power, I think, would be crazy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But as I say, they now have decent AI models that can be put on an advanced cell phone with a lot of memory and will definitely be not easily, and it may not work very well, but I've been seeing the reports from people who've done it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that will be in the iPhone in September.
Mm. Yeah. Something
Yeah.
to look forward to.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the extinction of human beings. No, it sounds so funny, but the people who are worried about it, not saying it will happen, but that it could, includes 4 of the 5 most respected AI scientists in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Hinman in Toronto, Joshua Bengio in Toronto, Ela Suchkaver, who's with, was it Google and is it now at OpenAI? These are the superstars of our business.
Mm-hmm.
And they've all done remarkable things. They have said, they put out a petition, which I also, to be signed, I signed that petition, that there is a real risk that must be dealt with. Now, most of them hope, because they're still working making AI, that we'll find a way to prevent that from happening. Guardrails, they call it. But so far, what they have in guardrails, for example, in a ChatGPT, you can't ask it to tell you something pornographic unless you use a few tricks and hide what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And every the guardrails have been totally bypassed by different
Yeah,
researchers.
where there's a guardrail, there's a way to get around it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But good news, yes, some of this stuff will let you talk to somebody who doesn't speak your language in Nigeria or in China.
Mm-hmm.
That's already doable. It's going to be on our cell phones.
Oh, that's exciting.
Too.
That's exciting. Okay, well, that's about it for us, Dave. We're kind of at the end of our hour here. This has been Community and Technology with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid. We've been kicking it about AI and placebos and healthcare and some of the latest advances in vaccines to fight cancer and other diseases. So, a lot of information. So, stay tuned. Every Wednesday, 5 p.m. on 90.3 FM, The Voice of Harlem. Just might learn something. Thanks. Good night.